Just a reminder, nothing I share here is financial advice. This is all based on my own experience, my strategy, and how I see the market. You're responsible for your own trades, so always do your own research, manage your risk, and never trade money you can't afford to lose. This content is meant to help you learn and think for yourself, not to copy or follow blindly. Let's keep it educational and intentional. Welcome back to the White Rabbit channel. Bitcoin is continuing to range. In the last update, I was looking for the mid-range and the support and resistance level that we had here. The plan was to take more profit on the short and also look for a long or add to the position. For me personally, I didn't add or open a new long at this place, but it was a nice take profit level which was shared in the Telegram in advance. And as we can see now, price is already moving away from that level. If I had added to the long, I would already be taking some profit to secure the trade. But we can't plan what we would do now because I missed that entry. Anyway, let's move forward. Let's have a quick overview. What I'm looking at on the higher time frames is the power law, the production cost, and some other things that could point toward a bottom formation. This area is way above the usual 80% bear market drawdown, but that is simply because we didn't have a classic euphoric top. So with that in mind, price retraced around 50% and is already hitting this level instead of doing the usual 80% move down. Don't get me wrong, everything can happen, but I prefer to focus on the higher probability events and accept small failures. With that said, this is the area where I look for a bottom to form. As mentioned in previous videos, the bottom could form here, or price could move lower to the next level. Our job is to watch the lower time frame price action and determine what is most likely. When price was hitting a bigger support and resistance level, while also entering an important time window, mainly the 202-day cycle, the probability of staying in the range was higher. That's why I marked this area here for a possible bottom formation. At that time, price was hitting the production cost, this major support and resistance level, and also the right timing window. That combination created a lot of bearish sentiment overall because people expected either an immediate move down or an immediate move up. But instead, all we got was a range. So as things stand right now, I cannot aim for lower levels unless this level breaks. If that happens, then yes, I would look for lower levels. But until then, the focus was to trade this range and focus on longs because the confluence we had suggested exactly that. And that brings us to the next chart. Here we have a few things flashing. First of all, one of the indicators I use flashed a bottom signal. Overall, several signals have already flashed that typically appear only near bottoms. We can see this here with the strong signals on each low and the one we have now as well. Every time these signals appeared in the past, it was at or near the bottom. That's one reason why I slowly accumulated Bitcoin here. Then we had another signal that flashed, which statistically says there is a 70% chance that price will not make a new low at all. And in the case that it does make a new low, there is an 85% chance that it will not close below this low. Another confluence is that price almost always made a new all-time high after this signal appeared. In about 95% of the cases, it made a new all-time high before ever closing below that level. Only once during the Corona crash did it close below it, but even then, that event turned out to be the ultimate low. So what this tells me is that we are at a major higher time frame level based on multiple data points. I see several indications that usually appear near or at bottoms. Even now, they are flashing and suggesting that there is a very high chance this is the bottom area. That means even if price moves down again, there is roughly an 85% chance that the Bitcoin will not close below this low. Of course, lower probability events can always happen. Even the 5% scenario can play out. Statistically, we might be right 9 out of 10 times and still see occasional failures. That's why this is not financial advice. Statistics work both ways. The focus should always be on high probability events and following them over time. So what I'm leaning toward right now is that this could be the bottom. Deviations can happen, but there is a high chance that this is the bottom area. Even if price chops around or makes an SFP of the low, which is not guaranteed, historically in 70% of cases, price never even revisits the low again. Of course, that's not a signal to open a 100x leverage long. For me, it's more of a bias signal that I should be looking for more upside again. If we want to call it a bear market, it was a short one. Of course, I can be wrong, and all the low probability events could play out. In that case, I will look at the next historical data level. But until then, I will go level by level. And the first one is telling me that price-wise, the bottom signals are flashing. Time-wise, however, there is still some room. Now, zooming in further, I can see that the rabbit box flashed a signal on the weekly time frame. I think this only appeared on the index chart. And if we look at how often it has flashed, we can see that it's a very rare signal. It only happened once during the last bear market. It didn't catch the absolute low, and all the compound entries were hit, so the average entry was not perfect, but still around the low. And the gains afterwards were massive. Now I see it flashing again here. For these cases, I have extra capital allocated specifically for my strategies and the timeframes I trade. So for me, this means I'm buying some more Bitcoin and targeting 93.637K, and I probably won't sell all of that there. If this really turns out to be the bottom that eventually leads to new highs, like it has every time before, then I will definitely hold at least part of the position for further upside. In short, I'm accumulating Bitcoin here in this range slowly but surely. I'm also waiting for some additional signals where I will add more. That would happen if price moves lower. In that case, I will deploy the second big portion. After that, I would look for confirmation entries, but that could take time. However, I already bought a big part here. As planned, I also still have more capital ready if something happens. And if nothing happens, that's fine as well, because I already accumulated on the rabbit box setups. This is not financial advice. Always have your own plan. Okay, and that brings us to the local range. We have a few things to look for here. First of all, of course, the range high, the range low, and the mid-range itself. Currently, Bitcoin is moving from the mid-range back toward the range high again. So that is the main level to watch right now. If I see weakness there, I will most likely look to add to the short. If there is no weakness, the short will simply get stopped out. But that's fine, because most of the profit on that position is already secured. And if price continues moving higher, I already have leveraged longs running for higher prices, as well as long-term spot setups and overall spot holdings for the upside. As mentioned before, I'm buying in this area, both directly and also on my setups. So I wouldn't have a problem missing a long here. However, if another setup appears, I will look to add to the position or open a new leverage trade. The new opportunities for me would mainly appear below the mid-range. Here I marked out the levels I was talking about earlier, together with the statistical probabilities of what usually happens when price comes down to these levels. As I showed before, in 70% of the cases, this level is never touched again. However, if price retraces, I would mainly watch this level, especially the average level, the mid, and the closing base level. On average, after these signals appear, price can retrace. And that retrace would usually be a new low, an SFP, or a deviation of this low. That would be the expectation based on the other statistic that says we don't see a close below the low in about 85% of the cases. So that means this low is now becoming my biggest level of interest, because I have several confluences around it. That doesn't mean price will come down there, but if it happens, that is where I will be looking to take action. Then we have the closing base level. On average, when price takes out the low, or even if it doesn't, the lowest candle close tends to happen around 62K. For me, this is strong confluence. I traded this exact setup before. Maybe some of you remember the 74K area where I had the same setup and traded it all the way to new highs. And here we are seeing the same setup again. Another thing I'm currently watching is the monthly statistical average timing. We can see that slowly but surely we're approaching the average dates for either a monthly high or a monthly low. That means if price continues rising now and we see weakness around the average timing window for the monthly top and price starts losing some levels, then I could expect the monthly high to already be in. The monthly low would technically still be in play and price could move lower. But if it takes too much time and both average timing windows pass, then I would no longer expect a new monthly high or low. In that case, I would rather expect the range to continue. Of course, that's not always the case. But until proven otherwise, that's the expectation. And if it fails, we simply adjust to the new situation. So for now, as I said, I'm watching where this move stops. For a new leveraged long, I would prefer price to come back down to the lower levels. If that doesn't happen, I will simply keep the runners that I already have. For a new short, price would at least need to take out this high. But if that happens, I might even look for higher levels because we have some higher time frame levels above. So without weakness, I would not blindly short. If price doesn't move to that level, then I simply keep the short running, the same as the long. One of them will make more money in the end. But on the short side, I'm taking profits more aggressively because my overall bias is still to the upside. I don't care if we get some deviation. I would even welcome it. For now, I just follow my data as I always have. Sometimes that means accepting a loss, but most of the time it means doing business the right way and making money. So that's basically it. On the bigger picture, nothing has changed. We are still in the same area, just with a few more bottom signals flashing around this zone. That's why I'm buying more spot here, either for long-term holding or for rabbit box setups. For new leverage trades, I still need to wait. Now I'm going to mark out a few local levels for the Patreon members. So if you're interested in more updates, make sure to join. I will also soon share the first part of the educational video. Right now I'm preparing it locally and will share step-by-step how to build the journal, the one you can use to test your own strategy if you backtest it. I'm not showing all the details here yet, but basically if you have a strategy, this journal will tell you whether it's profitable or not, something that most people actually don't know. To be honest, most traders don't even know how many trades they take in a week, and I'm pretty sure that many of those trades are random levels with random rules. Even when people think they are following a system, I'm sure that system is always different because they don't write down the rules and they don't track their trades. So overall, it becomes gambling while pretending to be a trader with a plan. Sadly, that's the reality. Of course, in the beginning, we are all like this and we lose money. But over time, I think you should start tracking your trades. That's where the real learning begins, because the data will tell you the story. I don't want to reveal too much here, so this will mainly be for Patreon members. If you're interested, make sure to join. Until then, I wish you a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one.